Well, hello everyone. My name is Steve Zobrist, and we're going to take a look at the short course for Windows Server 2012 on the IT Masters curriculum. I'll be presenting the course, and it's also co-designed with Erdal Oskaya, and he's a very wanders the world around doing a lot of lectures and doing a lot of seminars, etc. So he's very, very well qualified in Windows Server 2012. He's done a lot of courses for IT Masters as well too. So he's a very, very good resource, and we're very happy and very lucky to have him available to us. This short course is really geared towards just giving you a general taste of what the type of curriculum we're looking at is going to be like in next year when we actually offer this. The 527 course is simply a server administration, but we're going to start off with some basics, things such as licensing, things such as doing installations from scratch, etc. Then we're going to build up using Hyper-V, file services. We're going to be doing an awful lot of building up on the base knowledge that we're going to get here just from the first couple of weeks that we're going to be together. The course itself is a part of the Masters of Systems Development for csu.edu.au. So if you have more questions as far as what other courses are involved with that, what the aims of the degree are, etc., please hop up online and take a look at what the course descriptions are, what the aims of the courses are, and so on. I think you'd be very impressed. And we are trying to keep as close as possible to some of the leading edge technologies so that we can kind of keep all the courses very relevant to what some of you are going to be running into. Now, this short course structure is going to be along the lines of a webinar, which consists of a lecture workshop and some recordings. Of course, this is the first step of the sort of recording that we're going to be doing. And I'll step through, first of all, part of a PowerPoint slide deck. Then we'll move on to some demonstrations. Then I'll go back to the slide deck again. And we'll go back to the demonstrations once more. In the normal course, you will have some labs that you can do. I highly recommend getting as much finger time, if you will, on the keyboard with this session or with this material. It'll definitely help you on the exam, and more importantly, it'll help you in the workplace. You'll see that as you went from maybe NT Server to Server 2000 to 2003 to 2008, there was a lot of consistencies as they took it through. Well, the 2012 server I found has a very different interface. Everything is pretty much there. It's just that you do have to find it, so some hands-on with the labs is going to certainly help you quite a bit. There are some online labs that you can also take part in from Microsoft free of charge, and I'll provide you with that web link later on. The study materials for this course is a series of MSDN articles, TechNet articles, some PDFs, some Word documents, etc. that we've posted up onto the site. So I encourage you to take a look at those because that's what your final exam is going to be based upon, in conjunction, of course, with the recordings of the demonstrations. You should dedicate or set aside 8 to 12 hours of study time for reading the material, studying the material, and doing the labs per week. Now, this is on top of course, your family situation where you may have kids running around, you have a full-time job, etc. It's not an easy thing to schedule into place, but I found it was very rewarding to be able to do this and find time to be able to write the papers, etc. As I mentioned, it's a little bit painful sometimes, but it definitely is very rewarding at the end. All right, so that's just a quick, brief intro to our course. Let's go ahead and get started with the official, if you will, slide deck. This first portion is going to be dedicated to Windows Server 2012 planning the actual installation itself. Now, to a lot of people, that four-letter word plan is a little bit frightening. I've found a lot of people who just like to jump right into the situation and then try to go ahead and kind of work it out as they go. So they'll do an installation, kind of work on things, and kind of play with some migrations, and their actual implementation time skyrockets because they didn't go through the whole planning process. Part of this planning process, of course, includes things such as licensing, different types of products that you may want to take a look at. And in some cases, you may be actually recommending some of these products to some of your clients, or you may be taking a look at some of these products yourself. So it's a good idea to take a look at what kind of products there are, type of installations, what the minimum requirements are, what some of the benefits are of each one, and then also maybe just playing around with some of these things as we go through this first section. The Server 2012 installation planning process includes a number of things. And this is a very, very short section on this. You'll see that the reading material also gives you quite a bit more and fleshes things out quite a bit. Now, a couple of things that are different over previous versions, such as NT, Server 2000, 2003, even Server 2008. Those systems used to come with a 32 and 64-bit support for the most part. Server 2008 R2, of course, was 64-bit support only. Server 2012 continues that with 64-bit support only as well. So your 32-bit support is gone for Server 2012. They've broken this down by quite a bit into the various server versions, which include Datacenter, Standard, Essentials, and Foundation. At least these are the ones we're going to be taking a look at. There are a couple other versions floating around out there as well too, but we're not really going to concentrate on that, those in this area. All right, let's pull up a PDF file, which is one of the ones that are available for download. I'd like you to take a look at this. Some pretty cool information in here, I think. Actually, let's go ahead and see if we can make this a little bit larger for you to see. Hopefully not too large. Let's just make that a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, so here's the first four that we'd like to kind of concentrate on in this portion. Right, Windows Server 2012 Datacenter Edition, Standard Edition, Essentials Edition, and the Foundation Edition. The Essentials, we'll come back to the Datacenter and the Standard Edition here very shortly. The Essentials Edition, though, is really geared for the small businesses. You take a look at the maximum number of users, it's sitting there at 25. So not a lot of users can actually be set up here and utilize the resources, but for a small business, 5, 10, 15 people even allows for a little bit of growth. It does allow the purchase of Standard if the business needs do change over time. So it's really designed more as a first server option for a business. And this does replace the SBS line, Small Business Server line from previous versions, 2008 and so on. Some other things to consider, of course, are the maximum amount of RAM at 64 gig for the Essentials, and some other items in here which we'll come back to very shortly. The Foundation Edition is a general service, or excuse me, a general purpose server for up to, as you can see here, 15 accounts, 15 user accounts. However, it does require greater skill for administration over the Windows Essential. So the Windows Essential really assumes that there may not be a whole lot of IT support available. Foundation assumes that you do have some sort of IT support, and they do that your support does kind of understand what's going on and how to actually utilize the product a bit more. Now let's take a look here at some of the other changes here between Datacenter, Standard, Essentials, and Foundation. Focusing especially on the Essentials and Foundation for a few moments. You'll note that they all have things such as differences in maximum RAM, 4 terabytes for this for the Datacenter and the Standard Edition versus 64 and 32 gigabits respectively. Maximum number of 64-bit sockets, quite a bit of a difference there. You'll take a look at some of the other items in here, such as Hyper-V is not available for your Essentials and Foundations. That could be a make or break factor for some folks. Another thing to take a look at perhaps is RoDC, or read-only domain controllers. And yes, it does exactly what it sounds like. It's a read-only domain controller so that changes don't actually get made on that particular controller. It just replicates information to that controller. More on that later on in the course itself. Another real handy one that I like, at least, is data duplication, but note that it's not available in our essentials in our foundation. When we have to worry about uptime, etc., you may want to take a look at failover clustering as well. Note that we don't have that in the other two versions. There were two versions. And something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, at least, is the server server core mode. Server core is without a GUI. So if you want to manage the server, you're going to be down at the PowerShell and the command line utilities to manage that server, or you can utilize MMCs and some things from other servers that do have a GUI installed. More on that a little bit later on. So as you can see, there are some major differences here with the four versions. Now, as far as the maximum number of users for data center and standard, you still have to worry about client access licenses and so on. So that is in addition to your server licenses themselves. So you still have to worry about the licensing model. Oops, try that again. There we go. My apologies, I brought up the wrong, forgot to get that one, cancel that one out. There we are, it's a bit better. So those are the four versions of Server 2012 that we're going to be concerning ourselves with. Server virtualization is another big one. I fell in love with this server virtualization ages and ages ago. And then finally got to do some really cool implementations using Server 2008 R2. And Hyper-V, which is really what I liked. The other types of virtualization that Microsoft had in the Oracle box and so on, very cool. But for production purposes, I like the Hyper-V side of things. Yes, you do have VMware out there, and for VMware shops, they're going to swear by that. Hyper-V shops may swear by theirs. They both do hypervisoring. I'm not going to do any kind of comparisons, etc. But in this course, obviously, we're going to be focusing on the Hyper-V virtualization aspects for Microsoft. Differences between Data Center and our Standard Edition are, in the virtualization area, is really the virtualization rights. Data Center and Standard Edition really have all the same features. They've got all the same stuff, etc. It's really just the same operating system, except for the capabilities of virtualization, availability of virtualization. Your Standard Edition, you are entitled to run an instance in the physical box, as well as 2 instances in the virtual OSE with each license. So you can use essentially the Standard Edition of the physical box to manage the 2 virtual machines that you may have out there. That's one way of doing things. Now let's say, for example, you wanted to run, let's say 4 or 6 virtual machines on a standard box. We have a couple of options. Option number 1 is to purchase Data Center Edition and use that, because that's an unlimited number of licenses, excluding the cows, obviously. Or you can do what's referred to as stacking of licenses. In other words, you could buy another couple of editions of the Standard Edition and add those licenses up and stack them so that you can support 4, 5, 6 virtual machines on your standard box. So I think that's a pretty cool capability in there that at least is made available. Now, one of the things also when they talk about the virtualization unlimited in data center, that's open for interpretation a little bit, I think. First of all, you still have to worry about client access licenses for each of the servers. That's number 1. Number 2, it really depends an awful lot on your physical box as well. Used to like one of the base operating systems or base physical boxes rather that I used to order was a SAS box with 96 gigabytes of RAM. That was our standard box. That seemed to work really, really well in for our site. And so we had maybe 3 or 4 of those boxes, and then we could, depending upon what the virtual machine was running on there, I could have them 15, 20, 30 or more virtual boxes running at the same time, depending upon how hard they're going to be getting hit. So I kind of had to scatter those around a little bit and take a look at the resources that they were utilizing. So you are still constrained, even though it says unlimited licenses, you are still constrained to a certain extent with the physical hardware that you have. Now, speaking of physical hardware, what is the hardware required for installing Server 2012? Well, these are the very, very base minimum requirements just to get it started. 1.4 gig processor, a half a gig of RAM, a 32 gig hard disk, the DVD for loading the OS, a super VGA monitor, so you can at least see what's going on, keyboard, mouse, and of course internet access to do the updates and licensing and so on. Now again, this is the absolute bare minimum that you would probably want. Doesn't mean the server is going to really do anything. As an example, if you're trying to get directory services loaded, well, that's going to suck up some hard disk space. Oh wait, if you want to get file services, etc., you're going to have to start expanding things a bit. Depending upon what your requirements are, you're going to be boosting the processor. You may have multiple multi-processors with multiple cores. You may have gigabytes, multi-gigabytes, tens of gigabytes of RAM. And of course you may have terabytes of disk storage. So it kind of depends on what exactly are you trying to do with that box. There is an installation option called Server Core. And quite frankly, I think this is a really, really, really cool thing that's available. Server Core does have a couple of advantages. Now, some of those advantages are listed there. Hardware resource conservation, as an example, is a really, really good one. The reason this hardware resource conservation is because with the Server Core, we're not loading up things such as the GUI. We aren't loading up any of the extraneous things such as Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer, these other types of GUI type things. You have Notepad still. That's still around. But it's very, very limited as far as the other types of utilities and tools that you have. Everything is pretty much done from the PowerShell, from naming the server to assigning IP addresses to doing installations and silent installations of MSI files and so on. Another advantage, of course, is reduced disk capacity space. Because we're not loading up all of the other paraphernalia, we are able to conserve that disk space. Reduced patch frequency. Well, we're going to have a lot less exposed surface area for attacks. So we don't have to have as many patches, which will also hopefully reduce the number of times that we have to reboot our servers. So those are just a couple of really, really key advantages of utilizing Server Core. Now 2008 R2, 2008 server, as well as 2012 all offer the full server and the Server Core installation options. So we're still carrying over from Server 2008. However, the difference between, at least one of the big differences to me, between Server 2008 Core and Server 2012 is that I can transition back and forth between a full server and a Server Core. I don't have to reinstall the operating system. So if you're at Server Core, there's a PowerShell utility, which we'll take a look at here a little bit later on, that you'd have to use, and it will install the GUI interfaces and everything for you. Likewise, you can go ahead and remove the GUI off of a full-blown installation and revert it back to Core if you wish to. Well, what are some of the things that we can actually use Server Core with? Well, here they are. It's pretty extensive, I think. ADCS, or Certificate Services, ADDS, or Directory Services. We've got DHCP, DNS, Hyper-V, all of these things can be done with the server core installation. Again, though, you don't have the GUI to help you. This is all done from the PowerShell or from a remote system that you can utilize. All right, let's move on to the next one here. As I mentioned before, our GUI can be removed and rolled back to server core if required. So it's just a simple PowerShell command line that we can utilize right there, and it's very, very simple. Now there's another one in here that wasn't in Server 2008, and this is the minimal server interface. This removes a lot of the more, as I mentioned here, the hardware intensive elements from the GUI, things such as Internet Explorer, things such as your Windows Explorer, etc. However, it still leaves some of those management tools that we've known to grow and love. Server Manager, our various MMCs, Microsoft Management Consoles, Device Manager, PowerShell, of course, is still there. So minimal server kind of strips down some of the things, so it's not quite as resource intensive, but it leaves a lot of the GUI things in there that we may want to utilize in order to manage the server itself. There is also a thing called Features on Demand. And this is a new feature with Windows 8 as well as Windows Server 2012, and this allows you to remove roles and feature files, actual files themselves, from the operating system so that you are conserving disk space. So you can install roles, you can install the features from remote locations if you want to, or from installation media instead of from the local computers. So we're not storing all those things in a side-by-side component store. We're actually gaining that hard disk space back again. A couple of things to note if you do choose server core. The user interface, the command prompt, that is your whole user interface. So you don't have a graphical shell or anything like that to mess with. I cheat. I write a lot of things into a notepad file, and I can just copy and paste to the PowerShell command, making the substitutes as I need to for some of the switches and so on. You can install, configure, and uninstall server roles locally at a command prompt with the Windows PowerShell. Again, all done from typing on the keyboard. So your MMC isn't available, and of course your desktop experience is not available either. Now if you choose the GUI option, you get all those cool little colors and things like that to click on back again. So you have the standard graphical user interface. You've got the ability to use Server Manager with Windows PowerShell. You've got the Microsoft Management Consoles are all installed. You can, if you wish, install a desktop experience, etc. to help you out. So lots of different things you can do with the GUI option. But again, it takes up more disk space, takes up more resources, takes up more, it really increases your overhead, increases the attack surface, and so on. Well, here's a quick overview. If you happen to choose, or you need to make a choice between the different options. Server core installation on the far left, varying degrees, minimal server with GUI installation, and with desktop experience over the far right. So you note here that I have the command prompt and I get the Windows PowerShell in core, but I'm missing everything else. Going all the way over here to the desktop experience, and I pretty much get everything. Nice one that I kind of like is the server with the GUI installation option. It doesn't give me the themes, I don't care. Windows 8 shell, don't really care. Windows Store and support for Windows Store apps, don't care. Windows Media Player, I'm typically not going to be using that on a server. So for me, that's usually a good option for me to take. Again, it's kind of, you're going to definitely have to take a look at your environment to see which one is going to be suitable. All right, let's take a look at installing full server and Server 2012 core. All right, now I'm using Hyper-V here, and I already have a couple of these systems running, but I want to create a new one. Here's a 2008. Here's a server core that we'll come back to a little bit later, and I've got a domain controller running in there, of course, a workstation. So I'm just going to create a new virtual machine. Now you can do these with the demo versions as well for the most part. I'll just call this one Server 2012 GUI. And let's see, I'll come up here to my virtual hard disk. I'm going to stick it in the demo folder. There we go. Next. 512 is the bare minimum. I'm going to boost that up to 20. You know what? I've got quite a bit of memory out in here, so I've actually got 32 meg here because it's my I bought. Gosh, come on. Ah, there we are. Numlock. There we are. 49.6. This is the system that I purchased pretty much strictly for this purpose. Let's stick on the domain switch. All right, so there's my name. I'm going to drop this down to 80 gig. And I'd like to install the operating system and have it boot from my Server 2012 ISO file. And boom. So let's go ahead and get that one started. I'm going to connect to that one, start it. And we just have to wait for a few Microsoft moments while this picks up all the settings, etc. Now, one of the things you'll also need if you are, depending upon how you're doing this, if you are also going to be installing this on a live system or you happen to have access to some licenses, etc., you'll obviously need to have the activation codes for this to actually work. Now, there are two different types of activation codes. There's one for the standard edition, and there's also one for the Datacenter Edition. Now, I subscribe to a thing called TechNet, which I absolutely love, and I highly recommend if you're going to be doing this as a profession, or better yet, get your business to purchase it because it's well worth having that around. With TechNet, I'm able to have access to all the cool, well, I shouldn't say all, a lot of the cool software, Windows operating systems, the Exchange Server, SQL Server, things like that are all available. All right, let's see, I need to put in the activation of the product key. And here with the product key, I'm going to select the GUI. And make sure you read the license agreement and that you actually understand it and you agree to it. I'll click on Next. Now, here we have a couple of options. So I'm doing an upgrade. I want to keep all the file settings, etc. If we had a 2008 R2 systems, for example, this is one we would select if I want to keep the DHCP, the file services, and things like this. But I want to do a custom one because this is a brand new installation. In my case, I don't need to load any drivers. For example, if I had a SCSI RoDC system or something like this that I'd have to load additional drivers for, I would probably have to select that, get the drivers installed before it actually recognized the drive itself. So I'll click Next, and now we wait for some Microsoft moments. This will probably take about 10-15 minutes or so to run through the installation. Not a whole lot more to do, and it'll reboot itself, I think, twice. And then, yeah, we'll be able to log in, set the password. Bob's your uncle. You're all set. All right, let's go and do a core installation this time. And this will be Server 2012 core. And go to the demo folder once more. And I'll set 20, you know what, I'll still set this one for 4096. Connect this one to a domain switch. This is a virtual network that I created. Has the HTTP services and everything else running there. Set that for 80 gig. I do want to do an installation from an ISO. Hit Finish. connect to that. I'll start it. I love Hyper-V. It's just, for me, it's very, very easy to work with. And so, especially on demonstrations or if you're doing a test lab, etc., and production environments, absolutely love it. Very, very flexible. We'll do quite a bit of Hyper-V and virtualization in general during the course, although not in these first 4 weeks. All right, I'll get the setup to start here. I'll get the license keys added here. And this one's going to be, this one's going to be a core installation. Again, it's going to be a custom install. All right, there we go. All right, so getting the files ready for installation, etc., does the expansion and does the installation, etc. So that'll take a little bit of time. So don't really need to watch that, I don't think. So let's see, take a quick look at where the GUI is. That's about a little over halfway done as far as expanding the files and so on. So let's go back to here. So that's really all there is to it, to installing full server and install the core server. Very, very simple, straightforward. The fun part, of course, is getting it configured. Let's take a look at some upgrade paths which would allow us to go from a previous version, such as 2008, 2008 R2, to 2012. Now our upgrade path is a bit narrow. First of all, it has to be a 64-bit platform that you're going to do an upgrade on. Now remember that an upgrade is not the same as a migration. An upgrade is taking the same box that you currently have, whether it be a 2008 or 2008 R2 server, 64-bit, and then putting 2012 onto that very same box, hopefully keeping all the settings, etc. Migration is different in that it takes a previous version of Windows and you essentially export all that information onto a new build of Server 2012. So if you're trying to, let's say you had a Server 2003 domain controller, let's make something a little bit easier. Let's say DHCP server, and you wanted to migrate the DHCP server over to Server 2012. You can't do an upgrade because you can't do an upgrade from 2003 directly to 2012. You actually have to migrate those settings. There's a whole step-by-step procedure that are available in TechNet showing you how to do that. When you upgrade a server, though, you do really need to pay attention to the hardware requirements. I don't think they're all that over the top, really, from 2008 R2 to 2012. Maybe it's because I was purchasing some pretty good equipment at the time. But for those of us that may have 2003 servers, or Server 2000 servers for whatever reason, still floating around out there. In fact, I know I knew one place that had an NT server until about a year ago or so. You really have to watch out for the upgrade path at that point. First of all, check hardware compatibility on your 2008 R2 box, how much disk space you have, what software is actually signed, digitally signed, your application compatibility. This is going to require some testing and sandbox environment until you're very comfortable that the applications that you have are actually going to run on Server 2012. Make sure the computer works. I had a colleague of mine who did a lot of consulting work, and the very first thing he would always do is ask the customer to bounce the server. Turn it off, turn it back on again. Basically shut it down and bring it back online again. You wouldn't touch it until someone did that. Just making sure that, hey, the computer actually works before you touched it. Highly recommend a full backup, top to bottom. If it's a virtual machine in Hyper-V, that could be really simple. Just turn off the server and then go ahead and just copy the VHD or VHDX file, as an example. Some cases you may not be able to do that. There may be a physical server as well. Maybe you need to do a P2V type of thing, or where you go physical to a virtual conversion and save it as a VHD file. You'll need to disable your antivirus software and also disconnect the UPS, because it can play some havoc when you go between, if you keep that UPS and your ABIOS kept on. Now, this is what I mentioned previously. That was the first one option. There was the actual. Let me go through a couple of other things I did forget to mention. There are a couple of restrictions on this. In-place upgrades from one language to another are not supported. So, as an example, if you work in an international environment, unless you have some servers that are in German or French or Brazilian or Chinese, etc., and you try upgrading from one language to another, well, that's not supported. In-place upgrades from one build type to another aren't supported. If the server is a domain controller, that isn't going to be supported. Upgrades from pre-release versions are not supported. And if an upgrade that switches from a server core to the server with a GUI mode in Server 2012 in one step isn't supported. Now, we can cheat quite a bit. We go from core to core, from core 2008 server to core 2012 server, and then change the core server 2012 to a GUI environment. We can do that. It's just we can't do it in a single step. Migration is probably the preferred method for replacing an existing server with Server 2012. It does make rolling things back a lot easier. And from my perspective, you're not left with all the mistakes and junk from the previous server. With an upgrade, of course, you inherit everything that might have been wrong on that server to Server 2012. Sometimes a bit of a pain in the rear end there. Migration copies information to the clean server between versions, between platforms, between editions, between physical and virtual instances, and between installation options. So you have a lot of different things, and you've got the Windows Server migration tools to do migrations with. Just a lot of different resources available to help you with the migration. It does take a lot of planning. There's no mistake about that, but I think it's well worth it if you get the chance to do this. We have a number of operating systems that our server migration tools do support, which I think is really awesome. Again, a lot of these things are on the TechNet articles that we've posted. You can find some on MSDN. You can find them all over the place. So it's reasonably easy to find a lot of these resources. Again, though, you may want to make sure you do a lot of these things in a sandbox to do the playing and do the testing, etc. Now take a look at what the source server processors are. Remembering that Windows Server 2012 is for 64-bit OSs, as you can see in the far right-hand side here. And the source server processors can be either x86 or 32-bit or 64-bit processors. So you have quite a few different mixes in here, but they all end up over on the same 64-bit platforms. We have Server 2003 with SP2, R2 with 2003, 2008, 2008 R2, and so on. So some really, really good options here, I think, for taking some of us out of the, I don't want to say the dark ages, but out of the dim ages of still using 2003 as our core operating system and getting us up into the Server 2012 realm. So some really cool options there that are available. All right, let's take a look at doing some upgrades. 2008 R2 Standard Edition with DHCP services. This one does take quite a bit of time. It's kind of the downside of it. But we also take a look at converting GUI's installations to core and then maybe back again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start that upgrade process first because it does take a while, and hopefully it'll finish before we have to end the session. So let's see. I've got my server 2008 R2. I'm going to connect to that server. I'm going to just do a quick login. Now I do highly recommend that you build your own lab for these exercises, and just to get really familiar with the different types of technologies. I think it's very, very worthwhile to have your own lab. All right, I'm going to open up my DHCP services here, and let's take a look what the settings are, so we can kind of compare what they are now and see if the actual upgrade actually, or excuse me, the upgrade itself actually works. So I've got a 10.10.10.0 network. It happens to be a /24. My address pool goes from 10 to 30, and I don't care about my password here. I've got don't have any real leases at this point. Again, it's just kind of a fake type of installation here, if you will. Don't have anything on IPv6. I left that one alone. Note that there's Win 2008 R2 STD 0 listed up there. Now, what I'm going to do is insert my 2012 server DVD into the system. Now, it just so happens, by the way, one thing I did forget to mention here. Let's take a look at the architecture. It is a 64-bit operating system. All right, so here we go. I want to run the setup from the DVD. I have about 80 gig available, so I'm cool there. As I mentioned before, this is going to take, I think, about 20 minutes-ish or so, at least on my system. So we have to answer a couple of questions, just like we did previously with the base installation. Now, one of the things, this is a bit of a new one here that we didn't see previously. Go online to install updates. This is recommended. Well, for demonstration purposes, I don't want to do that. It is probably recommended that you want to get the latest and greatest patches, hotfixes, service packs, etc. But I don't want to do this. I'll just say no thanks. Now, for the activation key, we'll have to put this in. Let's see if I can get this activated. Hopefully it'll activate. I'm having a bit of an issue here on that. Now, the other thing you can also do, one thing that that does not work is if you have a Windows Server 2008 R2 demo version that you've downloaded from the Microsoft site, and you're trying to upgrade that to a Windows Server 2012 live version or full version. That just doesn't work too well. So tried that and it didn't want to do its thing. I think I typed this in incorrectly, so I'm going to try typing it in again. There we go. All right. So we'll stick with the server GUI installation. I'll accept the licensing. Now here's our two choices that we had previously. We can do a custom install Windows only. Note that settings, applications, etc. are not moved. Well, I want to make sure that I keep everything, so I'm going to take a look at the upgrade option. That's going to go through, check the compatibility, make sure life is all good, etc. That gives me a compatibility report, and it says it's going to have some issues with some devices, etc. I'm just going to blow through that because I don't really care. Now it goes through the copying of the Windows files. It'll go through collecting files. It'll do a couple of reboots, etc. As I mentioned before, this is going to take probably 20 minutes. So we'll come back to this one a little bit later on. All right, well, let's check out some of our other installations that we did. Let's see. We've got a server core installation. Let's try that one. I've never signed in, so I've got to change the password. There we go. Yay, my password has been successfully changed, which means that I actually typed it in correctly. And there's my wonderful, there we are, there's my wonderful interface for server core. Yay. And we can do some fairly simple things here. Let's check out the host name of it. It gave me some really bizarre host name at that point, which, yeah, probably don't want to really keep. Let's see, let's do an IP config. And it gave me 10.10.10.106, which is actually within the range of my DHCP server that I have installed on that network. So that actually works pretty well. Let's see. One of the things we can also do is let's do a net SH interface, IPv4, show interfaces. For those of you that have a Cisco background and love working with a CLI, the command line interface, this probably looks kind of familiar. We've got a net show our interface, specifically the IPv4 side of things. I'll show all my interfaces. I've got a loop back in here with an index of 1, and there's that 12 right there that I'm actually more concerned with at this point. So I want to make a note of the number 12 there. I want to assign an IP address and a subnet mask and a default gateway. So it's really easy within our GUI environment. We just kind of right-click on the adapter and go to properties and so on. This is, you have to do a little bit more typing. Like I said, I like to cheat. I like to do a copy of something from a notepad and do a copy and paste. But in this case, we'll do it manually. Let's see, that's what, 12, I believe. Now I do have, oops, static. Now spelling isn't exactly my forte. Is equal to 10.10.99, I believe, is a free one there. Well, my mask is going to be a /24. So that's a 255.255.255.0. Again, it's a standard classic C subnet. And I'll set my gateway up as, we'll leave it as a 10.2. 10.10.10.2. Now, did I spell everything correctly? We'll find out here very shortly. Oh. Yeah, there's a spelling error right here. All right, there we go. Much better. And if I wanted to, I can also change the host name. But I think you get the idea that a lot of the things here are going to have to be done from the console. All right, one of the things we might want to do is, well, gee, we kind of made a mistake. We really don't want to do this. We would really like to have a GUI installed. So I'll need to open up a PowerShell session. I just type in PowerShell. You'll note that it's in PowerShell because I have a PS there at this point. Now I have to do a couple of things here as a prep work. Get Windows image dash. Now I have the installation media mounted. Let's see what happens here if I spelled it correctly. Now what I'm looking for with the installation media is I want to convert this over to a server or a standard server with the GUI. Now here's index is server standard core, which I'm already at. This one's server standard. Service data center, I don't want either one of those. So the index here is 2. So I got to write that down. Now I'm going to do the installation of the GUI, etc. So install-windows feature server. By the way, this is not case sensitive, so if you like doing uppercase and lowercase and mixing them around, that's okay. Sometimes my challenge is I put dashes where they don't, or spaces where they don't belong. I want to make sure that I restart this. I have to specify the source, and here's where I have to use that index that we had before. My win file for installation is my d:\black sources black install dot wim, and it's number 2. Okay, so Windows install Windows feature, server GUI, MGMT infra, server GUI, that looks good. And let's see if it gives me red messages or green messages. Red messages are obviously bad. All right, collecting data. Green message, cool. Let's leave that alone, and hopefully in the next 10 minutes or so that'll do the conversion over. And let's switch out and come on over here to our server GUI that we did the installation on. By the way, let's go ahead and check on how our 2008 server is going. Okay, it's about 19%, 20%. That's going to take a little while. All right, there we go, running through and getting our final installation running. Now, of course, at this point, I want to make sure that everything is patched up correctly. I want to make sure all the service packs, the hot fixes, and things like that are all installed as well. That'd be part of our installation process. The ideal world, you'd have a couple of these VHD or VHDX files floating around, already patched and ready to go. And all you have to do is copy and put them online, rename them, assign an IP address, and pretty much Bob's your uncle at that point. Let's see. Oh, right, there we go. There's our standard interface. For those of us that haven't worked with Server 2012, or have never seen it rather, note that it is a big difference in the interface. Whereas from the Server 2008, 3, NT, 2008, etc. All right, cool. Here's our server manager. Let's pull that up. We'll wait for a couple of Microsoft moments for this to pop up. Notice also we still have our PowerShell available, so I can still issue the same type of commands. Oops. If I don't do a fumble finger on that. And it looks like it's still having some challenges here as far as, there we are, it's starting to come up. Let's take a look at where our server core, okay, it's about 68%. Now I did cheat quite a bit on this. I found that if I have already installed core, then installed the GUI, and then uninstalled it, and then reinstall it, it goes a little bit faster that second time. So this is actually an image that took it that second time. So a little bit of cheating there to kind of keep up with things. And I'm looking about 47% on the conversion of 2008 to Server 2012. So that shouldn't take more than a couple minutes, I hope. Meanwhile, one of the things I can also go through here is our server manager, and this is on server 2, the Datacenter Edition rather. You'll see that we do still have the management tools up in the upper right-hand corner. Add roles and features, remove roles and features, add servers, create what's called server groups. We'll cover that a little bit later on. I think Erdl has that in the 4th session. We can also bounce over here to our local server. This is my local server here. Looks like I installed some updates automatically. Last updates were at 11:46 a.m. I got some events that have occurred, some warning stuff in here as an example. I also have my services. So the layout here is quite a bit different from the Server 2008 and prior. My tools are available here. Computer management, Hyper-V Manager, ODBC, 32-bit, 64-bit, always nice to have those handy. Our services, same type of things we've usually had, various PowerShells, server backup, etc. All right, let's take a look at where And here, there we go. Okay. Now, some of the things that I do really like with the newer versions is the ability to manage multiple servers all at the same time. So if we had multiple servers available, integrating directory services, IP address, we knew all that information, etc., we could actually do installations from a single server and push it out to the other servers. All right, so I've got computer name in here, which I may or may not like. So click on that, I'll change it, and I'll change this to, let's see, Server GUI 2012. How's that? So that should be pretty much the same as you've seen on Server 2003, basically all the previous versions. We still have to do a restart and so on for that to take place. We'll give that one a miss for right now. Still have my Windows firewall that I can go through. Remote management. There we are. So now I've got private networks, yes, public networks. I still have my advanced settings here. But I can take a look at pretty much everything from Server 2008 is pretty much the same here. All right, so I can set my inbound rules, my outbound rules. Again, no real changes here. For those people that are new to this Windows firewall settings, whether it's from 2008 or 2012 here, you can be very, very fine-grained as far as what you want to allow in here and what you want to keep out, probably more importantly. So there's my inbound rules as an example. What am I going to allow in? I've got all sorts of things, IPv4, IPv6 packets being malformed or too large as an example. My outbound rules, whether or not DNS is going out, packets being too big, etc. You want to monitor your IPsec. You got your main mode, and you have your quick mode portions here. You can also monitor. Again, beyond the scope of this course, that's more of a security type of things that you may want to get into. All right. Removing the GUI is also pretty simple and straightforward. We did an install on the last one, so on this one, oops, yeah, that is okay. I do have PowerShell. This may not work here actually because I have a pending reboot. Install Windows FEAT work feature. Remove the server GUI. Management infrastructure there, and the server GUI. Remove the shell as well. I'll have it automatically restart. Also, let's see if I type that correctly. I guess I did. I usually don't type things correctly the first time. I usually fumble finger it somewhere. All right, there's 68% on the server core. And, oh, good. It's already done the, it's finishing off the getting files ready for installation, etc. We'll do a restart on that one. We timed that one really well. Now, I think that's the first one of 2 reboots. Maybe it's 3 reboots. I lost count on that one. All right, so just kind of as a quick overview of some of the things that we've taken a look at. We talked about planning the installation, the fact that it is 64-bit only. We are concentrating more on the data center and standard editions, but we did mention the essentials and foundations. You do need to know what the differences between those 4 are, especially in, from my perspective, a production environment where you may be recommending things to customers, as we previously mentioned. Licensing is still an issue with me. I still get confused when we take a look at the licensing side of things. Even after taking several Microsoft courses on specifically focus on various licensing, I still have to go to a licensing calculator. Still got to make sure that I double check everything when I'm looking at the licenses. Most of them client access licenses and so on. Installation requirements, we mentioned also, remember this is a bare minimum Don't expect to get a whole lot of production work out, but you just got to get it installed, muck around with a little bit, and then we're going to tear it apart again. Not a bad option. Server core, lots of things here that we talked about as well. The fact that we can add and remove the GUI, we've just been demonstrating that as well too. Features on demand, new thing with Server 2012. If you do plan on taking any Microsoft exams, please make sure you focus a bit on the new features, the new capabilities, because Microsoft does like to test on those. Server core option, I think we've already seen through the demos that, hey, there is a bit of a minimal interface here that doesn't give us a whole lot of flexibility with MMCs and graphical types of things we can utilize. It's all done from a PowerShell or command prompt. GUIs gives us lots more capabilities as far as using point-and-click type things. Here's a good overview of what's available, what's not available. You might want to take a look at this one for your exam as well as for production use. We did an installation of full server as well as core server. We talked about upgrade servers and the difference between upgrading and migrating, as well as the positives and the negatives, if you will, between the two. We also hit the various migration tools, very rich in this case. And we're to the demonstrations. So let's go ahead and check to see how our items are. Well, there's 90% removed, so that's looking really good. 92% on that one, and looks like we still have another reboot or two to go on this one. All right, looks like we have some more folks that have joined us. If you do have questions or comments, etc., please feel free to pop there into the chat session. I'll try to keep an eye on it. I've got multiple screens here. I'm kind of concentrating on the left screen versus the chat window, but I do try to keep an eye on that chat window as we go by. I'll try to have this session posted probably tomorrow afternoon. So if you did miss a portion of it, then at least you do have the opportunity to play back a portion of it. We're still going through some of the installations here. All right, the server core getting converted over to the GUI is pretty straightforward. The conversion from GUI back to server core, again, is pretty straightforward. It's just taking us sweet timing here. I won't bore you with the details on that. The upgrade for Server 2008 R2 to Server 2012 is kind of interesting. I was hoping this finish up a little bit quicker than the 18 to 20 minutes it normally takes. One of the things we can do is we can check the DHCP services, make sure that they are still actually working online. There are a few little tweaks in there that we do have to take a look at. One thing also, keep in mind when you are looking at these DHCP services and DNS services, etc., is making sure you don't have the overlaps, etc., or if you do have the multiple servers kind of taking the slack out of each other, that you do kind of plan for downtime, etc., when you're doing upgrades and migrations and so on. A great big four-letter word, plan, always seems to tick into place here. All right, any other questions, comments, etc.? Like I said, it looks like it's going to be a little while for this to finish off, probably another 15 to 20 minutes. So, but you can still do a lot of these things online with the Microsoft Virtual Labs. I encourage you to take a look at those. They are free and does give you a chance to muck around. One of the things I have noticed, however, is the firewalls in some companies may block you from getting actual physical access, or I shouldn't say physical access, but from getting access to those virtual machines. It looks like they're paused or they're stopped, or they just won't start. That's typically, I found at least that's a firewall setting within the corporate environment that I'm working in. Yet as soon as I step outside of it and I do it from home or I do it via, let's say, a hotspot from my phone, it works just fine. So I do, again, encourage you to take a look at those online labs that Microsoft does offer free of charge, just whenever you get a chance. The nice thing about those is you can screw them up to your heart's content, nobody cares, and we're all good. I'm sorry, Terry. Yes, you got your hand up there. I do apologize in spotting that. Is there anything you can type there into the chat windows or anything? All right. Yes, I do see some of the struggles that you're having. I don't know what the deal is. I'll contact the provider and see what our challenge was this time. The link, I am going to double check. It should be the same for all 4 sessions. We aren't going to be changing that. The URL for the recording is going to be posted on the discussion forums, and probably right there with all of the other materials is what I plan on doing. I'll try to compress it a little bit so it's not such a huge download, because right now it's going to be a pretty big one from the looks of it. Lab setup for the demos that I'm using. I went out and I dropped about $1,500 on a server, which included 32 gig of RAM, a SSD hard drive. It only takes about 15 seconds to boot. Has a terabyte SATA drive in it. But the thing that I was really concerned about was the 32 gig of RAM. So for $1,200, $1,400, $1,500, you can get a pretty nice system. For some people, that's a bit over the top in cost. But yeah, if you're going to be doing this for several years as part of a study program, it may not be may be worthwhile to invest that in there. Better yet, have a chat with the IT guys there at your facility. Maybe they've got a spare server sitting around. The other thing, as I mentioned before, that I would really recommend, if possible, is to get a subscription to TechNet, maybe through your local library. In some companies, they've got a library that they work with, or the IT department of your company may want to fork out the $400 or $500 or whatever it is for the first year, but it does give you access to all the cool stuff that Microsoft has, the latest and greatest servers, plus all the old stuff, or older stuff I should say, with the exception of Windows 98 is noticeably missing. As far as being able to use voice, I don't believe that is an option on the webinar. And I am going to look at that here. No, I think the webinars are without voice, unfortunately, which is during our actual live sessions. I usually use GoToMeetings, and we do have a very interactive sessions for that. Yeah, I'm just double checking here, and oops. No, it doesn't look like I can find that right now. All right, let's see. All right, I have to do the restart here for this one. This is going from GUI back to core. Let's see where we are here. I'm still seeing 50%. I like that 15% for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. All right, we'll just verify that the, or at least we'll hopefully verify that the GUI actually got removed with any luck. All right, other questions, comments, etc. Again, I do apologize for the struggle to get in. hopefully we'll have that sorted out for Erdal. Erdal will be doing our next session. There's going to be some very cool things in that session. I think all the cool sessions are actually pretty cool. The download list also should be pretty well complete as well too, for you to take a look at some of the materials if you haven't done so already. All right, I'm not going to extend this any longer. I will try to post some of these demos online. I'll try to cut the demos down to probably about 3 or 4 minutes each. That way you don't have to struggle and try to get through all of this portion. Okay, unless there are other questions, I'll go ahead and close down the session and get the recording edited a bit and then posted up for your for the ability to download that. Hopefully, like I said, tomorrow afternoon your time. Hey, thanks a lot for your patience, and greatly enjoy having you all on board with us. All right, thank you very much. Cheers.